Morning, folks. I'm Ken Kilsmeyer with Wild Ones, and we're going to take you on a little prairie tour today. But I want to stop here just for a moment before we get started. I like these little pieces like this because this is what the average homeowner can do, even without a lot of property. I just got some butterfly weed in here, some prairie blazing star, little nodding onion, some purple coneflower, some monarda. And the interesting thing is this little piece here on this butterfly weed will produce dozens of monarch caterpillars every year. And I just want you to know that anybody can do this little thing here, and every little bit helps. Well, this is in their yard. This is the landowner's, the farmer friend of mine's yard. I talked him and his wife into a few years ago. We just went out back to the prairie where we'll be taking you here in a few minutes. And we just dug up some plants and put them in a couple of beds over here in their yard, just to diversify their yard a little, get a little wildlife closer to home where they can sit right on their porch and watch the monarchs and swallowtails and the birds come and get the seeds. And again, that's another little piece that anybody could do in their yard. Very doable. What I wanted to stop here on the first part of our tour was, I'm up here around farm buildings, an old farm setup, some new stuff, some old stuff, but there's always little pieces of ground. This little pit here in front of us was just a manure runoff pit from the old cattle yard from yesteryear. They did nothing with it but spray it and mow it every year. I thought I wanted to make this value added to this property. So I frost seeded this about 3 years ago into a native mix. And it's in its third year. It's still a work in progress, but still get a lot of butterflies here already. And then over here, here's around the old silo. It's just a little piece. He still mows the edge. But it's just a little piece. Instead of, he'd always come and spray that, around the edge to keep it clean. I thought, I'm just gonna add a little diversity to that. So I've got a native mix in there. You can't see it, but I just planted this year a wafer ash in there, and we get a lot of butterflies there. And right here, we're just gonna pivot that wafer ash. That's a good point, Chuck. The reason I put that there is last year I had seen a few giant swallowtails, and it is one of the few, or maybe the only, larval host plant for the giant swallowtails, which is a spectacular butterfly here in northern Illinois. So this other little piece right over here is where the manure pit culvert used to come out. And actually, there's still a culvert there. We used to just spray around that. So I just put a little native planting around that culvert there. So I got butterflies in a triangular spot here, and it just adds value. Now he doesn't have to spray around it. It adds wildlife value, and these are just little areas that you don't normally think about, but if you look on any property, everybody's got little I call them no man's land, that you could put in little pieces to enhance pollinators and birds. Well, this is the next step on our way out to our main attraction, but this is another little piece here along the lane that for years, well, once upon a time it was put into sweet corn, but it kept eroding down through. There's a main gully drainage here. So again, it was full of Canada thistle and nettle, and he would just spray it and we'd mow it. And I said, I just want to, like the last few pieces, add value to this little piece. So 3 years ago, after we killed it for the last time, I went in November with some seed mix from Prairie Moon and seed that I had collected myself from the prairie out back, and frost seeded this in November. Still some junk in there, but we'll keep burning it. And this year it's starting to look better than last year. But we've got purple yellow coneflower, monarda, cup plant, prairie dock, compass plant, Joe Pye weed, ironweed, some butterfly weed, and I know I'm leaving a few other things out, but then there's some native grasses coming in too, some big blue stem and switchgrass and such. Okay, folks, this is the beginning of our tour. Well, the beginning of a main tour. This is a sign that I had made that kind of tells you a little bit about me and my worldview. I'm a biblical creationist. I give God all the glory for the things that He has made. And here's kind of my key verse out of Psalm 111:2. It tells us, "Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them." And we're out here today delighting and doing some studying too, I hope. Yeah, so what we're looking at here is about 8 to 9 acres of once was corn and soybean fields, and we put it in the Conservation Reserve Program, where he gets paid cash rent to take this out of production, put it in wildlife habitat to help with the erosion and things like that. So it started back in 2003. I really didn't know what I was doing. We started in here. Conservation Reserve Program at that time only required 5 native grasses, and then whatever else you did, it didn't matter. At the time, I'm thankful, I thought, I'd like to have some wildflowers. So I stumbled across this website called Prairie Moon. Didn't know anything about them, checked them out, got a native seed mix. As we came and broadcast seeded this in 2003 originally, I sat on the back of the tractor with Prairie Moon mix mixed in a bucket of sawdust and just sat on the back and flung it out as we went across the field. Now I didn't get to do the whole field because I didn't have enough mix, but you'll see down here that you'll see where the flowers are, and I have since added many things. Now the little strip you're looking at in front of us was just a brome grass waterway with nothing. So in 2010 I did an experiment. I just mowed it as close as I could to the ground. I didn't spray it or anything. I wanted to see what would happen. I just mowed it as close as I could to the ground. And in November of 2010, I got another mix from Prairie Moon, and I just came and frost seeded on the dead sod. I've burned it every year. The first few years, it was a lot of brome grass, as you can imagine. It did look pretty rough. But I would have to guess to venture that this is probably 90% plus native now, and the native has pretty much taken over this little strip, and it turned out really nice. It was just all brome grass with very little wildlife value. Well, it goes with the old adage, if you plant it, they will come. So, of course, the pollinators have exploded, raised lots and lots of monarchs here. Tiger swallowtails, black swallowtails, there's some giant swallowtails occasionally, fritillaries, a lot of dickcissels, the occasional bobolink, the occasional meadowlarks, occasional ringneck pheasants, of course. And when you start the food, everything goes right up the food chain. So we have deer fawns that are born out here. There's some fawns out here right now. I don't know if we'll see them today. But when you have that, then you have the predators. So the coyotes that come through here frequent this pretty regular. In fact, 2 years ago, we had a pair of bobcats that raised 2 kittens down here in the ditch that you can't see right now. I have not seen them this year, but 2 years ago, we had a pair of bobcats that raised 2 kittens. So it adds diversity. You start with plant diversity, you get wildlife diversity. And what I tell folks is everybody loves the birds. Everybody loves to feed the birds, but most birds' diet are insects, and you got to have the right plants to have the insects to have the birds. I have read where it takes an average of 6,000 insects to raise a brood of bluebirds in a 16-day period of which when they fledge. Now we raise a lot of bluebirds out here now. I've got bluebirds in this house just north of us. There's 3 in there that are probably 3 days away from fledging right now. So we're out here with standing next to the compass plant. And a lot of things, what I tell folks is in the prairie, the power of the prairie is in its roots. Now you wouldn't be able to tell so much by looking at this right now, but we've had the driest spring maybe in my lifetime. We're like 8 inches behind for the year. The prairie is a little stressed, it's a little behind, but you can see it's doing pretty well. And the power of that is because it's in its roots. And its roots, from what I've been told, what you see above ground goes below ground or more. For example, big blue stem can go down 12 feet. Compass plant goes down a long ways. Now compared to like our turf grasses or corn and beans, you know, they have shallow root systems, which is why on CRP ground, Conservation Reserve Program ground, they encourage native plants and native plantings for the very purpose that you're planting on highly erodible ground, and it holds your ground, and it's a double bonus, it creates wildlife habitat. The CRP itself, what he gets paid for is 8. Then I added this, I told you this strip was a brome grass water. There's the narrow part of it, to right up here to where this cut is, from about right there, I added this. Okay. That wasn't, it's not in CRP officially. This was just a mow, and all we were doing was mowing it. I was like, I hate mowing. But originally it was that was the field, and we had set that up, and this didn't come, it's like that was 2003. I got tired of mowing this, and as I got more and more into native things, I was like, why am I doing this? I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna mow this to the ground, and I'm gonna see if native stuff can actually take over. And this is kind of my little pride and joy, this little strip. What I have out here for grasses is big blue stem, Indian grass, switchgrass, little blue stem, and side oats grama. So the big blue stem, in a normal rain year, I will have big blue stem out here that's all of 10 feet and probably averages 7 to 8. A big blue stem is the king. It's the king of the prairie. It's what, it is largely responsible for the formation of the prairie sod all across mid-America. It's what gives us our good black dirt. It's what gives us our bread, our corn, our beans. Part of the reason why I rotate burn out here, because if I didn't, eventually a lot of the grasses would take over. But prescribed burning helps the flowers, gives them a chance, and I'll rotate parts of this every year and burn parts and leave parts of it. As we talked earlier, it was put into the Conservation Reserve Program with and the government set that up to encourage landowners, farmers particularly, to take highly erodible ground out of production where they felt like they needed to get an income off that ground. So the government incentivized that and said, we'll pay you, and we'll hold the dirt, and we'll increase the wildlife value. And to qualify, it had to, I don't know the particulars, but it had to be a certain slope, probably a certain soil type. I don't know the particulars to that. But what we're basically doing is we are keeping the dirt in place. We're actually enhancing the dirt. Here's another interesting fact that I tell people, that in 1 acre of established prairie, there's about 24,000 pounds of roots underground. And every winter, a third of that dies off. And that's what creates that black soil that actually helped create the Midwest. So I've got a John Muir quote there, and I got another Elizabeth Barrett. That's a picture of actually this Leopold bench. So I'm just going to put a few of these here for when people come out in the next few days. Some are better than others, but here's a green with the wagon in the background. You see us coming down the trail, right there. From whose womb did the ice come forth, and who has given birth to the frost of heaven? So that's a picture of this sycamore tree back in January. And you can see that the prairie is kind of laid down, it's full of snow. The snow is pretty deep, so you got to think to yourself, where are animals going to live during this time? So that's when, that's part of the reason I planted this over here. I just took a shovel. This was just a little spring branch, and I just took a shovel and widened it and made a little dam up here with a little tube that goes through for a pool of water. So I can set trail cameras up here and you'll see the deer come here. Everything comes here for a drink. Birds, coyotes, the deer. I had frogs in here. This was like 2 weeks ago, this was full of tadpoles, this little piece right here. But I'll talk to you about, well, right behind us we got red chokecherry. Now that was native. I didn't plant that. That's part of what was out here. And I didn't know that. Thanks to Don Hennigan. Don, if you see this, he pointed out to me the chokecherry, and there's a big patch of it up here that we'll see in a little while. This big bur oak here is roughly, I took all their math and did all their, it's roughly 245 years old. So that's phenomenal to me because that's before America was America. So you just kind of have to think about those things. And you can only imagine in your mind if you could have stood here when this was a little seedling and looked at the landscape, how different it would have looked. So we got spice bush. Spice bush going on here with some 9-bark. These were from there's another place to get plants, folks, is every year, every county does, the NRCS, Soil and Water Conservation Service, has plants for sale, many of which are native. This is where I got, these are probably 4 years old, and they were just sticks. Spice bush, 9-bark, and then there's 2 wild plum up on the hill here a little bit further. But I wanted to mention this pagoda here. This is just the first year it's made berries, but I've got 5 of these out here, and I dug them up from one of our Wild Ones members' place, Don Hennigan. I went up there and helped him get ready for a yard tour a couple of years ago, and when I was up there, he had a bunch of them sprouting up in his woods, and I dug up 5 of them and brought them out here. I wanted him to be able to see. They were about like this 5 years ago, and now they're going well. And I've got some rough leaf dogwood. What's the holly? I can't think of the name of it now, but I've got some different native shrubs just started in here. High bush cranberry. The thing is, once you start your native thing, and this is what you hope for it to spread, you can see the monarda and stuff coming in over here along the woods. You know, I didn't plug those in, they just came in. The birds start to help you out. Yeah, as you can see, the bee balm's living up to its name. A bunch of bumblebees in it right here. Sometimes I like just to walk out in the middle of it and just stand there. Well, primarily because I'm an outdoorsman. I've hunted and fished my whole life. In my view, a true outdoorsman is a steward. They love what they do. They love to propagate it. They love to see it do well. They love to see it flourish. So organizations like Pheasants Forever, Ducks Unlimited, Quail Unlimited, Whitetails Unlimited, they all contribute to actually millions of acres across North America in wetland and upland and hardwood conservation to promote the health of the land for the things they love to do. And they are stewards, meaning they use the land, we use the land, not just to look at, not just to take pictures, even though we do that, but we harvest animals. I live on venison. We harvest a renewable resource, and we contribute back. In fact, I have found as I've grown up, I get as much or more enjoyment putting back as I do what I take. to promote the land, and nothing better than to see the little whitetail fawns jump up out of this prairie and take off. So the sportsmen of America and women have contributed greatly to conservation in America. Over here, towards the end where I have the trees, he still farms one field, and even the government said he can't fall till it because of the slope, but they still farm it in the spring. Now purple prairie clover is done. It's absolutely beautiful early on, but it's all gone to seed. It's not ready to pick yet. It's still pretty green, but this was all just a vibrant purple. And when those little no man's places that I find here and there and wherever, I'll use that seed or I'll take this and put it somewhere else and try to enhance another area that doesn't have any. These are white cedars, like a native arborvitae, and I got these from Soil and Water. They're just I've had them in the ground. This is their 3rd year. And the reason I have these cages around them, I go ahead and take the time to cage a lot of my younger shrubs and trees, especially because the deer will absolutely eat these like a salad bar. They had all this greenery off this winter, and that's come back this spring. But in a hard winter especially, the deer will take them right down to the wood. They love those. So that's why I just go ahead and it's a little more labor intensive, but I wait until they get up to where they can be off and running on their own. Little swamp white oak in the back, two river birches, and I planted a couple wafer ashes that are kind of struggling, but I think they'll snap out of it. Nannyberry viburnum. Now these were planted in 2017. They were just a pencil from Soil and Water. You can get a bundle of them. They're like $1 a piece. And as long as you have a little patience and protect them from the deer out here. But this year, you'll see them on the other side. They're just getting to the age where they're making berries. Now this is roughleaf dogwood. It's making berries. This is its 3rd year from got from Soil and Water, and it was probably about this big. Its 3rd year. But you can see that I try to keep a weed barrier around them. I have found if you can keep like a 2 or 3 or 4 foot weed barrier around your trees and shrubs, I don't know what the number is by percentage, but it's a significant growth difference if you can keep the competition away, at least in their young years, and get them up and going. You'll see a huge difference. It's more labor intensive, but I try to do that and keep a barrier until they can get going. Arrowwood viburnum, I planted these probably 10 years ago. They were just sticks. I planted them in a row. Got them from Soil Water, didn't really know what they were, but that's Arrowwood viburnum. And as you can see, even in a dry year, you can see these will all turn purple in the next weeks, and they are a bird magnet. The cardinals and thrashers love to nest in these thickets, but they will have these stripped by Thanksgiving. They'll have all these berries gone. The bluebirds, the migrating birds come in here. It's one of my favorite shrubs. Yeah, purple chokeberry is that's how he named it. Possibility Place Nursery. I wish I would have got a few more of them. That's the only one I've got. You can see this. This is what I envisioned. Remember, this was just a grass brome ditch. I planted the pines, I planted the arrowwood, and now it's all growing into a big screen. The CRP program is on a 10-year contract, and you have to renew it when it comes up every 10 years. Now there's different programs. They have a CREP, which is I think is a tree program, and those go 15 years. I think there are a few that go indefinite. But the CRP, like this piece of ground, is a renewable contract every 10 years. And there are certain things that the government wants you to do. They do want you to prescribe burn. I actually do it on a rotational, more often basis than what they even require. Just because I'm promoting the wildflowers, and I'm more of trying to keep it as pure a native piece as I can, so that's why I do that. Pawpaw. I just planted these arrowwoods this spring. These arrowwoods came off of a parent tree. The bird, what that happens is the birds eat the seeds. They'll fly up into the nearest big trees, poop out the seeds, and you'll have new plantings coming up. And I transplanted these from up at my mom's property, my mom and dad's, and I transplanted them down this because I want to make a screen here. And here's another pagoda, the first year berries from Don Hennigan. And 2 button bushes also right there, and some gray dogwood and 2 of those Canada hemlocks. Well, this is another little no man's land under the canopy of these bur oaks here. So I just planted several gray dogwoods. I've got another pagoda on the other side. I've got a red dozier and a couple of choke cherries. Yep, they're in here. So it's just a little spot that I'm trying to enhance for wildlife. It was just and is still a lot of nettles in there, but it was just nettles only, so I'm putting shrubs in there. Eventually they'll grow into a thicket. They're going to make flowers in the spring for the pollinators, and birds love the berries in the fall. Well, this was a 3-acre field that they normally just pastured because there's only 6 to 10 inches of dirt here, and we're right over bedrock limestone. So you have to think to yourself, what can I plant here that would be native and growing that will live on limestone? And there are some things. I've got some oaks. I've got some chickapin oaks going, red oaks, bur oaks, white oak, all down through here on the bottom side. And then up here, I've got mostly white pine because they'll grow. If you've ever noticed when you're on the river, they'll grow right out of the bluffs. I thought, well, if they'll grow out of those rocks, they'll grow out of 6 inches of dirt. So I get these from soil and water, bare root. The first year you got to kind of help them. You don't want them to dry out, but after that they kind of get off and running. So what you're looking at here, these are probably, this one right in front of us is probably 4 years old. The bigger ones up the hill were planted in 2013. And the ones that you see off to the north, the big, that whole planting over there is 2005. White pine, white spruce, and red cedar, juniper. And most of those junipers, I just dug out of fence rows because they end up getting sprayed anyway. I just dug them up, and they'll grow anywhere. They make good cover. They make berries. The wildlife pour into them. So I'm just putting this hill into cover, and the birds will pour in here. The deer fawns lay in here. The deer will bed in here in the winter when it's really nasty, and of course you get lots of birds. It's hard to get them going. It's better, I found, you got to double handle them, but do like I did at home. Yeah. Bare root, start them in pots. There's no competition. You can keep them watered. You can keep stuff off of them, and then come out and plant them in the fall. So what we got here is a chickapin oak. It's probably 3 to 4 years old. We got our tree sale coming up. Jerry says we're going to try to promote oaks. And if I have one, my biggest regret of this project out here is I wished I would have planted a lot of oaks right from day one. You have to have patience with oaks to get the satisfaction of actually getting an oak tree, because it seems like they stay seedlings for a while. But yeah, with a little help, you got to get a little help here when you're at least out in the country. The deer, if they don't browse them, what will happen in the fall is the bucks will rub them. They'll rub their antlers and they will snap them off. But the oak trees are one of our most beneficial wildlife tree you can put in the ground, because from an insect, I have heard that it'll support up to 500 species of different insects, which, remember what we said at the beginning, to have birds, and everybody loves birds, You got to have insects. You need oaks. And it makes acorns, which feeds the chipmunks, the squirrels, the deer, the turkeys, the blue jays, the woodpeckers, and probably things that I'm not thinking of right now. To wrap it up, I would say it started out as a hobby. I wanted to promote land stewardship, wildlife propagation, and really pointing to the glory of God, the Creator. That's what I want people to see. I want them to come out here and kind of be in awe